Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I am here with Emily Wilcox. Emily is a multiple seven-figure CEO and business mentor. She helps women walk the joyous path to millions. Thank you so much for being here today.
My absolute pleasure.
I'd love to hear just a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into the work that you do today.
Yeah, I was in corporate America for a lot of years and never thought I would be an entrepreneur. And motherhood changed that for me. Very surprisingly, my reentry into corporate America after having my daughter was a little rockier than expected. And while I was on maternity leave with her, my husband and I started our first little side business together, which was selling baby onesies on Amazon. And suddenly that went from just being this cute little side thing we were doing to, I wonder if this could be the thing so that by the time I have a second kiddo, I can do this really differently. And I don't have to be driving around Los Angeles, going from client to client, doing sales with pumps attached to my boobs, paying someone else $1,000 a month to watch my kiddo. Because this just doesn't feel like the way that we are biologically hardwired to take care of our kids. So that's how I got started. And of course, as you mentioned in that kind introduction, there's been multiple businesses and such an evolution in the process, but that was how I dipped my toe into entrepreneurship.
That's amazing. And amazing to have success with something right away like that. That's impressive.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, there was 3 years where I was working full-time, being a really present mama to a little one, and building this other business. And my husband, of course, was as well. And, during that 3-year time period, we sold over $1 million in baby onesies. And I also just want to be so clear, because I think sometimes, in entrepreneurship, we get it twisted. It's like gross revenue is not the same as what's actually flowing into your bank account. And of course, there's expenses with any business. And in this case, with physical products, there's the cost of inventory, advertising, storage, you name it. And so although we were doing really well, by the time we were ready to have our second, the business still didn't feel big enough, profitable enough, stable enough to completely support our family. And so we actually started a second business as well. And then between the two, and a hope and a prayer and some divine intervention, I was able to go, full time as an entrepreneur.
Amazing. And I love that honesty, because I do feel like sometimes when we're telling our story in retrospect, we can minimize the effort that it took, the 3 years where you're being a full-time mom, a full-time employee in corporate America, and building a business on the side. And those are hard years.
Yeah, totally. And I think we get all of this messaging about being all in and just making the leap. And what I've actually seen, having been behind the scenes on hundreds of businesses, many service-based businesses, many product-based businesses, there's always runway. And that runway is always created by something else, another source of income, whether that's, oh, my spouse brings home a paycheck, so I get to do this, or I've built up a big cushion so that I can live off my savings for a while, or I have a rental property and that makes us enough money. And so the idea that going all in means that we have to completely dysregulate our nervous system by jumping in before our business has steady and sustainable income is just a complete myth. And so any chance I can get, I'm shouting it from the rooftops, because I think it's done a lot of damage. And I've talked to many entrepreneurs who have mountains of debt and have no self-trust and feel totally sickened by the coaching industry now, because they fell into that and they believed that they had to just jump in and hire a coach before they were ready and go all in on their business. And guess what? What happened was they created a ton of stress for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved your class on investing, where you were kind of just breaking it down. And you said that we need to embody the future version of ourselves before we're actually there. But I also love what you're saying now. in like a reasonable way, in a way that doesn't completely dysregulate our nervous system. And you're talking about how sometimes the $7 investment is scary, and then you get farther, and then you're like, oh, I'm investing $7,000. But could you talk a little bit about that, about how like we need to be the version of ourselves that we're becoming in the present moment before we become her?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question, because this is also one that often gets a little bit twisted and manipulated, or we interpret it the wrong way. And so the way I often see it interpreted is like, oh, okay, well, like future me flies business class and takes the bougie vacation. So I guess I'm just going to do that now, even though I don't really have the money to support it. And that's really not it. That's not it, because it's like, we have to hold the vibe of the future version of ourselves. And it's like, if you can only hold it for 10 minutes while you click purchase, and then all of a sudden you're like, crap, I can't pay all my bills. Oh my gosh, I'm in scarcity. I'm freaking out. What's happening? You've not helped yourself. You haven't actually moved forward. And so often when we talk about the embodiment of the future version of ourselves, it's typically far less about the action, and it's so much more about the feeling. And so with my clients, like when we do that visualization, it's like, okay, you know, what is she doing? But like, also, how is she feeling? And what are some things now that you could be doing that give you that same feeling? And this is so important, because I will tell you, just to make it super tangible, one of my core values is freedom. And so anytime I'm tapping into a future version of myself, she's always experiencing lots of freedom, like financial freedom, but mostly time freedom, just like really spaciousness of schedule. And so then when I think, okay, what things can I do now that make me feel free? It's like eating lunch outside on a beautiful day, taking extra time in the morning with my coffee and sitting on the balcony and looking at the ocean, going for a midday walk. It is things that cost me $0 and 0 cents and allow me to get into the feeling of that future version of me. And so when we reorient that teaching around feelings, that's when we start to make the progress that we want to make.
That's a huge reframe. I feel like it's like, how does this future version, like you said, feel versus like what material possessions does this person have?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if we just try to buy all those material possessions now with our current bank account, we're going to freak out. It's not going to feel good.
It's not going to feel good. You're going to be like, what was I thinking? What is the biggest shift or breakthrough you've had in your own life around money?
Okay, so many, but the one that I'm feeling called to share is a reframe around not having the thing yet. And I really spent a lot of my life feeling the distance between where I was at and where I wanted to be as lack. Like, I don't have it yet. It's not here. I'm running out of time. I need to like pressure myself. Can I do it faster? Can I do it better? And my whole life changed, not just around money, but certainly with money, when I was able to tell myself a different story and really feel the gap between where I'm at and where I desire to go next as anticipation. So shifting from lack to anticipation, because there will always be things that we don't have yet, or experiences that we don't have yet. And do we want to spend our whole lives in lack and scarcity in pursuit of that? Or can we be in anticipation, like a kid that's counting down the days until Christmas, knowing that Christmas morning will arrive and there are going to be so many presents under the tree, and it is going to be so fun to open them.
I love that. And then you're going to want the next thing.
Right. Yeah. My kids aren't like, okay, I had one Christmas, I'm done. I never need anything again.
They're like, when's my birthday?
Totally. They're like, I know what I want to put on my next Christmas list. Like,
Yeah. How many days till next Christmas?
Yeah, and it's like, P.S. we all still have an inner child inside of us. And like, it's so normal. So it's not like, I used to follow a very like Eastern religious, like a spiritual path, right? And Eastern philosophy is really built around like kind of disconnecting from the senses and disconnecting from desires. And it's like a more like aesthetic, like monastic kind of life. And what I found was that I was trying to do that. And really I was just suppressing desires. And so allowing myself to actually own the desires and not make myself wrong. Like, it's okay that the day after Christmas, you're thinking about more things that you want, as long as it's not like, oh my God, I have to get them tomorrow.
Yeah.
And instead it's like, oh, I wonder how they're going to come to me and when they'll come. And oh my gosh, it's going to be so fun when I get to have that experience.
Yeah. And it feels fun to be looking forward to something, and it feels fun to want something. And I think we would be bored if we got to a place where there was nothing else that we wanted.
Totally. Like, oh, checked everything off the to-do list.
I'm done. I can die now.
Done.
Yes, I love that. So, I love how you teach that it's not just about making money, but who we are along the journey to wealth. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. And that question goes so perfectly with what we were talking about with this gap between where we're at and where we want to be. And that's why I talk about the joyous path to millions, because I want you to own your desire for millions, if that's true for you. And if it's the joyous path to six figures or the joyous path to a second home or whatever, it's like, we're all climbing this mountain, and we can choose to hate every step and be like, oh my God, I'm so sore. I don't know if I can take another step. This sucks. Only to get to the top and then realize that, oh, there's actually like another mountain behind that we're now going to go up. Or we can be like enjoying the best snacks and like talking to the most amazing people while we're on the hike and stopping to take in the journey and take pictures and like, wow, this view is so amazing. And look way down there where we started. Oh my gosh, those people look like tiny little ants. Look how far I've come. And so that's the joyous path to millions. And when we understand that really the reason our souls came into this human experience was for the journey, then we can reorient our lives. And I used to be so goal oriented that I was really willing to suffer a lot in the now for the idea of delayed gratification. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time to realize that that was going to be my whole life if I wanted to keep doing that. There wasn't ever going to be a day where it was like, great, now I just get everything that I want that I've delayed and put off for so long. And so now I practice what I call life first living, and reorienting to enjoying the journey and reorienting to the priority of life and in the present and what it means to live it. And yes, there's still a goal. There's still a North Star, but I've seen time and time again that we're actually not very good as humans at predicting accurately what we want and how it will make us feel. And so it's like, yeah, okay, I'm like loosely climbing the top to the top of this mountain, but also I'm mostly caring about enjoying the journey, because it's very possible that I'm going to get to the top of this mountain and be like, actually, this other one looks really cool. Let me try that one now.
Totally. I know. It's so true. Like, we think we know what we want. And then usually I feel like in my own life, what the universe ends up bringing me is so much better. And it comes in a completely different way and doesn't look the way that I thought it would. And it doesn't mean that you don't take the actions and you don't keep climbing the mountain, but it's like really being process oriented. This is something I'm working on, just being process oriented and loving my processes and like kind of letting go of the outcome a little bit. And yeah, it's like something to look at or a goal to have, but it might change.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you've decided I'm going to walk north. Fine, great. Walk north, but enjoy the walking more than the way that you're oriented, because you can always change the path. And it's so true. Like, I've said time and time again, like, I'm so grateful that, God dreams bigger than I do, and that God's more creative than I am, because the best manifestations that have come into my life were not my plan. And thank goodness, because they were so much better than the way that I imagined it coming.
Amazing. Yeah, 100%. How do you balance this, like this piece about enjoying the journey and this life first with the first 3 years, or like when you're just starting and you're working 3 jobs and you're like doing your business on the nights and the weekends and you're kind of like pulling your hair out?
Yeah. So again, the way that I did it is not the way that it's the way I needed to, but it's not the way that I would recommend, because I was still in that wounded masculine energy and in the idea of that you suffer and sacrifice now, and then you get a payoff later. And what I really know to be true in building this coaching business, which I've built for the last 2 years, and I did this one so differently, which was like, no, I want to enjoy, like you said, the process. I want to enjoy each day of it, not how do I bust through all this stuff now and just grind it out for the first 3 years so then I can enjoy it later. And so I think when we orient ourselves that way, like, okay, I'm starting from day 0. How do I really enjoy the process of building a business, and continuing to check in with yourself to make sure that you are building a business that you love? And that is a process. That is a part of becoming an entrepreneur. I don't know anyone who has nailed that right out the gates. You get an idea and you start going, and then you buy someone's course, or you hire someone as a coach, or you see someone else doing it a certain way, or you read a book, and then you all of a sudden start doing it someone else's way. And it's okay. It's fine. Like, we all want shortcuts. But then you'll start to fine tune and realize like, oh, okay, I like this part that they're doing, and this other part sucks. Like, when I have to wake up and create a reel every day for Instagram, it just feels like obligation. Mm-hmm. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but I really feel so strongly that right now, with this new paradigm that we're ushering in, that removing the vibration of obligation in every part of our lives is critically important. So anytime you just think you should be doing something, or you're doing it because you have to, or because it's going to help someone else, or whatever, that is not building the business that you truly love. And so just choosing time and time again to reorient and notice like, oh, dang it, somehow I got a little off track. I thought I was on my path, and then look at me, I'm over here in the weeds. Okay, no worries. I'm not going to make myself wrong for that, but I'm going to get back onto my path and not worry about what someone else's path is.
Amazing. And you talk a lot about energetics in your work, and then you also do bring in the structure, but would you say that the energy is most important?
Absolutely. Like, it's like 90% of it for sure. But what the beautiful thing about the strategy and the aligned action is that it's like we finally get to test it. And usually what it will reveal to us is what we like and don't like, or where things are still funky from an energetics perspective. And so it's not like, oh, I'm going to do all this healing and I'm going to like check the healing box or check the energetics box, and then it's going to be smooth sailing. It's really like this cyclical kind of thing where you tap in and you think you've got the energy the way you want it, and you get this divine download, and then you go to take the action, and then you find out like, oh my God, I'm like so afraid of posting this thing, or I'm so afraid of going live, or I sent this email and then I noticed that the rest of the day I had this anxious feeling in my stomach. And it's like, that's how we get the feedback from our body to notice like where we have an opportunity to do a little bit more healing or a little more energy work.
Amazing. Yeah. It's like a dance between the two.
Yeah. So it's like, yes, most any strategy will work, or most any strategy won't work, and it will teach you a lesson so that then you can figure out what works. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I'm really a proponent of taking messy action, because like, that's how we find out so much faster what's really going on.
I love that. I love that so much. So this leads me into my next question perfectly. What would you say about balancing masculine and feminine energy in our businesses?
Yeah. So, I mean, I come from the perspective of, being like a high achieving Enneagram 3, like great grades in school, like just wounded masculine energy all over the place, like people pleasing, externally motivated. And so coming from a place of wounded masculine energy, like there's so much healing and reconciling and like learning how to re-embrace feminine energy. But I also have clients that are maybe too much in their feminine, and we're working on allowing them to like trust the divine masculine, often first in themselves. Like they don't trust that when they give their word, they're going to keep it or they're actually going to do it. And it's like, well, okay, so that's an opportunity. No wonder you don't trust God and everyone else to like follow through and do things for you. You don't trust yourself. So either way, like when we're out of balance, coming into harmony is so important. And this is an oversimplification around masculine, feminine energy, but I think it's really helpful. What I've found to be like the recipe that kind of works the best is to start in the feminine, the divine feminine. So in this real state of receptivity, trust and surrender, just like open hands, like I'm open to receive. And then we get the download or the little inspiration or the intuitive nudge. And from there, what I have found is that I naturally want to then shift into the divine masculine and take an aligned action in support of that vision or that inspiration that I just received. And then where we sometimes go astray, especially if we've been overdoers and overthinkers for a long time, is that we take the aligned action in the divine masculine energy. And instead of going back to the divine feminine, like, okay, I trust and surrender the outcome now, I'm ready for the next intuitive nudge, we flip into the wounded masculine, which is like, okay, I took the action. Now let me take more actions. Now let me do more. Now let me keep thinking about it. Now let me figure out how I can like push it forward. Mm-hmm. So that I just share that as kind of like a watch out, just take the aligned action and then surrender the outcome and trust that like, it's like over to you, God, like passing off the baton. And now I'm waiting. And when you pass the baton back to me, I'm ready for it. And then I'll do the next thing.
I feel so called out right now because that is me. Like I'll be in this amazing receptive feminine state and I'll like get the hit and it's like life is moving through me and then I can't stop.
Right. All of a sudden you're like, wait, what happened? It's like the gas pedal gets stuck down, and all of a sudden we're like, why can I not slow down? Why are my thoughts racing at 1,000,000 miles per hour?
Mm-hmm. And you're like checking every 5 seconds. Did it work? Did they like it? Did anyone sign up? Like, no, not good.
Yeah, that's not the vibe.
Not the vibe. No. What would you say to a woman who has no problem attracting money, but has a difficult time holding it or hanging on to it?
Yeah. So I would invite her into, healing money wounds. And I have a free quiz that will help you diagnose your money wounds. You just go to moneywoundsquiz.com. So that's a really helpful place to start. There could be a lot of reasons why you're having trouble holding on to it. And that's why it's important that we get down to the root cause, like what's actually happening below the surface. It could be that you don't trust yourself with money. So you're wanting to kind of offload it pretty quickly, lest you build it up and then make a huge mistake with it. It could be that you don't trust money and that you are just sort of expecting it to abandon you, in which case might as well just spend it quickly. So at least you get the little dopamine hit and you get to choose where it's going before it just leaves you and, has to go to a car repair or God only knows what. It could be an evil money wound where it's like, it actually doesn't feel good to have this much money because it makes me feel like a distance between my friends and family and like what's actually acceptable in our community. So I would just, I guess at a high level, I would say get curious. There's not just like a one size fits all prescription here, but once you know what your money wounds are, then we can identify what the medicine is to work through that and create some safety around holding bigger wealth.
Amazing. That's so helpful. You were talking about how the shame money wound is really connected oftentimes to inner child work. Is there a reason specifically why the shame and the inner child are so connected?
Well, I mean, at the core of the money shame wound is worthiness stuff. And so I just find that anytime we're doing worthiness work, it's always our inner child. And it, you know, to anyone listening who's new to inner child work, you need not have had a traumatic childhood to have absorbed some messages that meant like, oh, I'm not just inherently worthy of love. I have to earn it, or I have to do this thing, or I have to be super helpful, or I have to be quiet, or I have to whatever. So, you know, my childhood is pretty vanilla on paper. And when I started doing this, I was like, holy moly, turns out there's actually a lot there. And like my inner child really needed to hear like how loved she was, like just for being herself. And that she didn't have to do anything, and that it was okay to screw up, and it was okay to make mistakes. And like, you know, all of those things I was just being so hard on myself. And so when we can get back to that place where we really believe that we're worthy because we are, we can build more confidence around stepping into our value and stepping into our gifts. I think especially with women, we don't have a hard time believing that we can be well compensated for things we don't like doing. Like when it's hard, when we have to put in a lot of effort, when we have to break our backs, like, okay, fine, great. Pay me multi six figures for that. But when it's our gifts, when it's like the thing we love the most in the world, all of a sudden it feels really funny to be, you know, charging well for that and earning a really good income. And that's money shame wound stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm learning a lot about human design right now. And something about the line too is that like we can't see our gifts. And so we don't even know that we're gifted. And I feel like that connects to what you're saying of like, I can't be paid for this. It's just so natural.
Yeah.
Or like maybe even so natural that I can't see it. And I think that's where coaching can be super helpful.
Absolutely. Like so many times I've needed coaches and mentors to say like, I don't think you realize how special this is. And it's true, because it's like the thing that's so easy to us and so obvious, and that takes us like 2 seconds to do. We just imagine that like it takes everyone else 2 seconds. And so why would it be that valuable? And so we need someone else to help us really see it from a different perspective and appreciate that, like, no, the thing that's effortless to you is the thing that makes your ideal client spiral out of control. They may never do it. It takes them a long time. It gets them frustrated. It has them questioning life and whether they will even want to do this thing. So yeah, actually helping them with that is super valuable.
Yeah. And you do that a lot with your clients, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. To see their gifts. Amazing. So with living life first, and really you built a business with a lot of balance and in feminine energy. How do you balance? Because I believe you have 3 businesses and a family.
Yeah.
You know, you have to take care of yourself. How do you balance all of that?
Yeah. I mean, some of it is having some good boundaries in place. Like I work about 20, maybe 25 hours a week. And don't get me wrong, like I love to work. Like there is a part of me that like, if Jeff took the kids on like a week-long vacation and I was just here in the house by myself, I probably would put in like a solid 40 hours because there is a part of me that just loves it, but not to the extent that I'm going to miss out on like volunteering in my kids' classroom. And, you know, like as soon as we get off of this interview, I'm taking my kids to the beach for a couple hours because it's summer and in a few weeks they'll be back in school. And so, you know, like keeping my priorities in check. is really helpful for me. Because like, if it's just an arbitrary rule, I'll get rebellious and not want to follow it. But if it's based on my why and what's actually important, then it's a really healthy boundary. But then I also believe that like the more you're doing in your business or the more businesses you're running, you just need a killer team, you know, or you need a lot of masculine energy. Let's put it that way. And so that can be team, that can be really great structures and automations so that you feel supported by the business instead of feeling like the business is your baby, and like babies really need their moms for their survival. Like you're on the clock all the time. So I've been really intentional about that. And I'm actually going through a big up level with a couple of my businesses right now where I've just hired like next level people. And it's always scary when you do that. You know, you're committing to like bigger salaries, sometimes even than you pay yourself. I mean, I remember at our agency, the first time that we offered someone like $150,000 a year salary plus health benefits, plus retirement. And it was like, oh, Lord, okay. Like this on top of our already, you know, big payroll, like we're going to feel it. But it was an up level. And it's like, that person is incredible. And the way that she performs and the load that she carries, it's like, you know, we wouldn't be where we were if we didn't have her.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the kind of what you teach about investing. Like you do have to make the scary decision. That's not necessarily where you're at, but it's where you're headed. And then you get to call in that next level.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like using a lot of discernment to figure out like where you're at and what's the right amount of stretch. So it's like, I have a client who she still works full-time in corporate and she's building her coaching business. And on paper, it doesn't make sense for her to like have a VA. But she's a projector in human design. And, you know, her vision really is her just kind of calling the shots and a lot of things being done for her. And I'm like, well, what would you think about just hiring an overseas VA, maybe even just for 5 hours a week right now, just so you get to feel what it feels like to be more in that guide, coach, visionary kind of role. And it's not going to cost you a ton of money. So there's a version of this at every level that you can start to play with.
That's such good advice. Then you're just getting into the vibe of having somebody work for you and also the relationships in place. So as your business grows and your workload increases for that person, they already kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Genius. So you talked a lot in your training about asking money for permission and how that's a really disempowered state. How did your life change when you stopped asking money for permission?
Ooh, this is such a good question. And I will be honest, like what feels true to me is to say it's still a work in progress. Mm-hmm. It's not like I just make every financial decision without consulting my bank account. So just keeping it on the real. But what I don't do is like, look at the bank account and be like, I guess we can't. And so Abraham Hicks talks about buying things with your mind. And it's such a beautiful shift because it's like, there are so many things that I know I'm going to be buying. And when I look at my bank account, I may say, I'm not going to buy it right now. But what I don't do is say, well, money is saying we can't. I asked money for permission and money said no. Instead, it's like, I really see it as when we say no to something, it usually means we're saying yes to something else and vice versa. And so there are times when I'll say not right now to a purchase. And it's because what I'm actually saying yes to is having an amount of money in my bank account that feels really good to me. And not wanting to put myself in a place where it might feel like scarcity vibes or where all of a sudden I don't feel like we're in overflow. And so when we kind of change the story of that, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're going to get e-bikes at some point. Right now I'm buying them in my mind and I'm choosing to keep our bank account in surplus. That just feels so different than being like, I really want this thing. And my inner child is running the show. And my inner child used to go to mom and dad and ask and get a yes or a no, which again, like is so disempowering, right? Like, oh, I don't get to make any decisions myself. But then we just play it out with money. It's like, oh, went to ask money. Money said no. Oh, I'm so disappointed. My life sucks. I never get what I want.
Oh my gosh, you're right. It's giving money so much power instead of using money as like a tool that works well.
And I often find that like, because feminine desire really leads and then masculine energy sort of like rises to the occasion, and money is like kind of a masculine energy. So when we really desire something, like I'll just keep using the e-bikes as an example, because it's a bigger purchase that we're thinking about making. And it's like, again, we have the money in the accounts if we wanted to, but let's call it like $5,000 in e-bikes. Sometimes like when we just sit with the desire and like let ourselves still feel it and kind of get playful about it. Like, I wonder, like, could a surprise $5,000 come in? Of course. Like, how cool would that be? I could have a new client sign. We could have this happen, that happen. Or like, what if we won e-bikes? Oh my gosh, how fun would that be? And so I often find that like manifestations can come in really fast when we can stay in the desire and stay in like the curiosity and playfulness, rather than like going to like our one linear path. Like, well, in order to make $5,000, if as a family, we're only putting away an extra $1,000 a month, we're just going to have to wait 5 months and then we'll be able to do it. And that's assuming that no other expenses come up. I feel like that's what our brain always wants to default to. Totally. And it's like the most boring way of living. It
really is.
So it's like, can I stay in the desire and come up with like a million ways that it can happen? And then usually it happens really fast and unexpected.
Totally. And just like we were saying earlier, like a lot of times it comes in a totally different way than you thought, or just the best things in my life, I have really wanted them. But eventually I've been able to like let go of my death grip. And then I get to have this like beautiful thing that just like comes in, and I didn't necessarily work super, super hard to make it happen, or even at all. So yeah, I think it's like a constant thing that we have to remind ourselves of, because it's not our natural like knee-jerk reaction.
Totally. And like, I think about the possessions that we have that are like the most fun to talk about are the ones that came from really interesting ways. So like right across from my desk, we've got guitars hanging on the wall. And one of those guitars I won in a raffle for my husband. And it was handmade by this guy in our local community who I had considered like buying his guitar making course for my husband so that they could make one together. And it was like the moment I saw that there was this guitar available at this Women in Business conference raffle, I was like, oh, that's mine. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we have so much fun talking about that guitar. Jeff plays the guitar all the time, but it's like, it makes it so much better that we weren't just like, yep, we wanted it and we saved up for it and we bought it. Like, that is so boring. No one wants to tell that story.
It's not a very good story.
No.
Oh my gosh, I love this. This interview has been so amazing. I have been looking forward to it. Like I said, I found your podcast probably years ago. I don't know how long ago, but then when I made that post and you commented, I was like, what? So I'm a huge fan of yours. I love your work, and this has been so fun for me. I would love for you to just tell us, how can we find you on the internet and like plug into your work? I know you have the money quiz, which is an amazing place to start.
Yes. So moneywoundsquiz.com. For everything else, I try to keep my website updated, emilywilcox.com. And I'm huge on like price transparency. So anything I'm selling, it's like available there. You can see the price tag. You don't have to get on a call with me in order to like find out if it's a fit. And then let's just hang out online. I'm Emily June Wilcox or at M Makes Money. And that's like such a nice way to start a little virtual relationship.
Yes, I love that. And I'll put the link to your Instagram account in the show notes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Have a great rest of your day. Have fun at the beach with your kids.
Thank you.
Bye.